Stop doing those endless cardio sessions on the treadmill. Stop punishing your joints with high-impact workouts. And whatever you do, stop believing that getting older means you have to accept weakness, pain, and dependence as your new normal. Because today I'm going to share with you one exercise, just one, that researchers at Harvard Medical School, the Mayo Clinic, and the National Institute on Aging have collectively called the single most powerful physical intervention available to people over the age of 60. And when I tell you what it is, you might be surprised because this isn't complicated. It doesn't require a gym membership. It doesn't cost a single rupee or dollar. And yet, most seniors are completely ignoring it while their doctors say nothing. I'm Dr. Mandel, and in my years of practice working with patients between the ages of 60 and 92, I have watched this one exercise transform lives in ways that medication simply cannot. Before we get into it, I want to share something that stopped me cold when I first read it. A landmark study published in the Journal of the American Medical Association followed over 8,000 adults aged 60 and older for a period of 12 years. The researchers found that those who engaged in this specific type of exercise had a 46% lower risk of dying from any cause during that period. Not 5%, not 10%, 46%. And here's the part that will really get your attention. The most dramatic benefits were seen in people who didn't start until after the age of 65. It is never, ever too late. Now, I'll give you the full breakdown in just a moment, but I want to tease something right now. The number one benefit we're going to discuss, the one most doctors never mention, involves something happening deep inside your muscle cells in tiny structures called mitochondria. Think of mitochondria like the power plants of your body, and after the age of 60, those power plants start shutting down one by one. What this exercise does to reverse that process is frankly remarkable. Stay with me because that section alone could change the way you think about aging forever. But before we dive in, I want to ask you something. Leave a comment below and tell me how old are you, and what is the number one physical challenge you are facing right now? Is it balance, fatigue, knee pain, difficulty climbing stairs? I read every single comment personally, and your answer genuinely shapes the content I create for you. Now let's get into it. The exercise I'm talking about is resistance training, specifically progressive resistance training using your own body weight or light weights. And I'm going to walk you through 5 profound ways this one practice can completely change your life after 60, counting down from the least to the most powerful. By the time we reach number 1, I believe you will never look at exercise the same way again. Number 5, and we're starting here because most people have no idea this connection even exists. Resistance training is one of the most powerful tools we have for protecting your brain. Most people think of cognitive decline as inevitable. They accept memory lapses, mental fog, and slowing thinking as just part of getting older. But research coming out of the University of British Columbia has fundamentally challenged that assumption. In a study involving adults over the age of 65, those who performed resistance training twice per week for 6 months showed a 19% improvement in cognitive function compared to those who did stretching alone. 19%. That is the kind of number we see with pharmaceutical interventions. And this was done with nothing more than weights and willpower. Here is why it works, and this is important. When you contract a muscle against resistance, your body releases a cascade of proteins called myokines. Think of myokines like little chemical messengers that travel from your muscles through your bloodstream directly to your brain. One of these messengers, called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, has been described by neuroscientists as miracle grow for the brain. It literally stimulates the growth of new neural connections. After the age of 70, your brain naturally begins to shrink at a rate of about 0.5% per year. BDNF production from muscle contraction can dramatically slow that process. I had a patient, a 71-year-old retired school teacher named Margaret from a small town outside of Birmingham, Alabama. She came to me genuinely frightened. She was forgetting appointments, losing words mid-sentence, and had started to withdraw from social activities because she felt embarrassed. Her brain scans were borderline, nothing severe enough for a diagnosis, but enough to worry both of us. I encouraged her to begin a twice-weekly resistance program at home. Nothing dramatic, just body weight squats, wall push-ups, and resistance band rows. 12 weeks later, her daughter pulled me aside in the parking lot with tears in her eyes. She said, "Dr. Mandel, I have my mother back." Margaret's own description was simpler. She told me, "My thinking feels like it got its oil changed. For optimal benefit to your brain specifically, aim to perform your resistance training in the morning hours between 7 o'clock and 10 o'clock a.m. when cortisol levels are naturally elevated and muscle-brain communication is at its peak. And pair this habit with even a modest intake of omega-3 fatty acids found in fish, walnuts, or a quality supplement which enhance the sensitivity of those brain receptors to BDNF. Scientific references for today's video are listed in the description below. Number 4, and this one is deeply personal for many of my senior patients. Resistance training can dramatically reverse one of the most dangerous and underdiagnosed conditions affecting people over 60. It's called sarcopenia, which simply means the loss of muscle mass. And I want you to understand how serious this is. After the age of 60, the average person loses between 1 and 2% of their muscle mass every single year. That doesn't sound like much until you do the math. By the time you reach 75, you may have lost anywhere from 15 to 30% of the muscle you had at 50. A study from Tufts University, one of the world's leading nutrition and aging research centers, found that sarcopenia is directly responsible for more falls, more fractures, more hospitalizations, and more loss of independence than almost any other age-related condition. And yet, when was the last time your doctor screened you specifically for muscle loss? For most of you, the answer is never. Here's the biological mechanism, and I want you to really understand this because it affects everything. As we age, our bodies develop what researchers call anabolic resistance. That is the formal term, anabolic resistance. What it means in plain English is that your muscles become less efficient at responding to the signals that tell them to grow and repair. It's as if your muscles become hard of hearing. The signals are still being sent, but the volume needs to be turned up. Progressive resistance training is the volume knob. It directly overcomes anabolic resistance by forcing the muscle fibers to adapt under load, triggering protein synthesis in ways that nothing else, including protein supplementation alone, can fully replicate. I want to tell you about Robert. Robert is 68 years old, lives in Phoenix, Arizona. And when he first came to see me, he was using a cane and genuinely believed he was heading toward a wheelchair within a few years. His legs had become so weak that climbing a single flight of stairs required him to stop and rest halfway. In 6 months of twice-weekly progressive resistance training, starting with nothing more than chair squats and step-ups using the bottom stair, Robert not only put away his cane, he started hiking again, 2 miles, then 4. The last time I spoke with him, he had completed a 7-mile trail with his grandson. He was 69 years old. The practical approach here is simple. Start with what we call functional resistance movements: chair-assisted squats, standing calf raises, wall push-ups, and seated leg lifts with light ankle weights. These movements directly target the largest muscle groups in your body, which are the ones most responsible for your independence. Perform these exercises 2 to 3 days per week with at least 48 hours between sessions to allow for muscle repair. And critically, ensure you're consuming adequate protein within 30 minutes after your session. Research from the University of Texas Medical Branch shows that post-exercise protein timing can increase muscle protein synthesis by up to 40% in older adults specifically. Number 3, and this is where I want to stop for just a moment and say something directly to you. If this information has been valuable so far, please take 5 seconds right now and hit that subscribe button. Tap the like button as well. It costs you nothing, and it tells the algorithm to share this information with other seniors who desperately need it. I make these videos because I believe every person over 60 deserves access to the same quality of information I give my private patients. Your engagement makes that possible. Now, number 3, resistance training is one of the most powerful natural interventions known to medicine for controlling blood sugar and reversing insulin resistance. And if you are over 60, this affects you whether you know it or not. Here's a number that should concern every senior watching this. Research published in the journal Diabetes Care found that approximately 50% of adults over the age of 65 have either full type 2 diabetes or a condition called prediabetes, and the majority of them have no idea. None. Insulin resistance, which is the underlying driver of this problem, is essentially your cells becoming deaf to insulin signals. Insulin is like the key that unlocks the door to let sugar into your cells for energy. In insulin resistance, the lock gets jammed. Sugar builds up in your blood, damages your blood vessels, inflames your organs, accelerates aging in your kidneys, eyes, nerves, and heart. And most people feel nothing unusual until the damage is already done. Here is what most people, including many physicians, do not fully appreciate. Skeletal muscle is by far the largest consumer of blood glucose in your entire body. When you contract a muscle, it can absorb glucose from your bloodstream through a completely separate mechanism that does not require insulin at all. Think of it like an emergency entrance that bypasses the jammed front door. A meta-analysis of 21 clinical trials published by the American Diabetes Association found that progressive resistance training reduced HbA1c, the 3-month average blood sugar measurement, by an average of 0.67%. In practical terms, for many patients, that difference is the line between needing medication and not needing it. I had a patient named Eugene, 74 years old, from outside of Memphis, Tennessee. Eugene had been on metformin for 6 years. His blood sugar numbers were creeping upward despite, and his doctor was talking about adding a second drug. Eugene didn't want that. He started a resistance program twice a week, simple movements, no gym required. At his next quarterly blood work, his doctor called him to say she was reducing his medication. 3 months after that, she told him his numbers were in the normal range, completely unassisted by drugs. Eugene called me that afternoon. He said, "Doc, I feel like I stole something from the clock." For blood sugar management, the timing of your resistance training matters significantly. Research shows that exercising 30 to 60 minutes after your largest meal of the day, typically lunch or dinner, produces the greatest reduction in post-meal blood glucose spikes. This is because you are activating that insulin-independent glucose uptake pathway precisely when blood sugar is at its highest. Combine this with a diet that emphasizes complex carbohydrates over refined ones, and you are creating a metabolic environment that aging bodies respond to with remarkable speed. Number 2, and I told you early in this video that I would get to something most doctors never discuss. This is it. Resistance training has a profound and scientifically documented ability to rejuvenate mitochondria, the power plants inside every cell of your body, in ways that directly reverse the biology of aging itself. Let me explain what happens to mitochondria as we age, because this is one of the most important and least talked about topics in senior health. When you are young and healthy, your cells are packed with robust, efficient mitochondria churning out energy. As we age, several things go wrong simultaneously. Mitochondria become damaged, they become less efficient, and your body's ability to create new mitochondria, a process called mitochondrial biogenesis, slows dramatically. After the age of 70, studies from the Buck Institute for Research on Aging indicate that mitochondrial function can decline by as much as 35 to 40%. What does that feel like in daily life? It feels like chronic fatigue that no amount of sleep can fix. It feels like starting the day already tired. It feels like your energy has simply been quietly stolen over years. Now, here is where the science becomes genuinely extraordinary. A study published in the prestigious journal Cell Metabolism, and I encourage you to look this up because The findings were extraordinary, even to researchers in the field, found that resistance training in older adults triggered a process called mitophagy combined with mitochondrial biogenesis. In plain terms, the exercise told the body to clear out old, damaged mitochondria and replace them with new, healthy ones. The researchers described gene expression changes in older adults after resistance training that essentially looked like the gene signatures of adults decades younger. Think about what that means. At a cellular level, this exercise was rewinding the clock. I want to share the story of Dorothy. Dorothy is 77 years old and lives outside of Seattle, Washington. When she first began working with me, she could barely get through a grocery store without needing to sit down. She described herself as running on empty from the moment she woke up. She had been evaluated thoroughly. Thyroid was fine. Anemia was ruled out. Sleep apnea was treated. There was no clear medical explanation for her exhaustion. I suspected mitochondrial dysfunction, which is rarely tested for in routine clinical practice. I put Dorothy on a progressive resistance program 3 times per week, with sessions starting at just 15 minutes and building slowly. By week 8, she was completing 25-minute sessions with no fatigue during. By month 4, she told me she was waking up before her alarm and actually looking forward to her mornings for the first time in years. She described the change as, "It's like someone replaced my old battery with a new one." The most important principle for mitochondrial rejuvenation through resistance training is progressive overload, meaning you must gradually and consistently increase the challenge over time. Mitochondrial biogenesis is triggered by metabolic stress, which means the muscles must work hard enough to deplete local energy stores. This does not mean pushing to pain or injury. It means that what felt difficult 6 weeks ago should feel manageable today, and something slightly more challenging should take its place. Start where you are. Progress slowly. Trust the process. Your mitochondria are responding even when you can't see or feel it yet. For optimal mitochondria benefit, pair your resistance sessions with a short 5 to 10-minute bout of light cardiovascular activity immediately afterward. A slow walk, gentle cycling on a stationary bike, or even marching in place. Research from the Karolinska Institute in Sweden found that this combination, known as concurrent training, performed in this specific sequence enhances mitochondrial adaptation by approximately 28% more than resistance training alone, and ensure you are getting adequate CoQ10, a natural compound found in beef, sardines, and available as a supplement, which serves as the essential fuel that mitochondria require to function. As we age, CoQ10 levels drop substantially, and restoring them creates the conditions for maximum cellular energy renewal. And now, number 1, the most powerful, most transformative, most profoundly life-altering benefit of resistance training for people over 60. And I want you to pay very close attention here, because this is the benefit that changes not just your body, but your identity. Resistance training is the most scientifically validated intervention available for preventing falls and fractures, which are without question the single greatest threat to independence and survival for adults over the age of 65. I want you to hear this statistic clearly, because I think it is the most important number in all of senior medicine. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, 1 in 4 Americans over the age of 65 falls each year. Of those who fall, approximately 20% will die within 12 months, not always directly from the fall, but from the cascade of consequences that follow. Hospitalization, immobility, infection, pneumonia, depression, loss of will, a hip fracture in a 75-year-old carries a mortality risk that rivals many serious cancers. And yet we spend billions fighting those cancers while almost no one tells seniors clearly, plainly, and urgently that the single most effective thing they can do to avoid this fate is to build strong muscles and powerful balance through resistance training. Here is the science of why resistance training is so uniquely protective, and it operates through 3 mechanisms simultaneously. First, stronger muscles provide faster and more powerful protective reflexes. meaning when you begin to trip or stumble, your muscles can react and correct far more quickly, often catching you before the fall even begins. Second, resistance training directly stimulates bone density through a process called mechanotransduction. When a muscle pulls on a bone under load, it sends signals to bone-forming cells called osteoblasts, telling them to lay down new bone tissue. A study from the University of Arizona found that 12 months of resistance training increased lumbar spine bone density by 2.1% in postmenopausal women, at an age when bone loss of 1 to 2% per year is the expected norm. Third, and this is the mechanism people most often overlook, resistance training dramatically improves proprioception, which is your body's internal GPS system. Proprioception is the unconscious awareness of where your limbs are in space. After 65, proprioceptive nerve function deteriorates significantly, which is a major hidden driver of falls. Resistance exercise directly stimulates those neural pathways and restores their function. I want to tell you about my patient James. James is 80 years old, lives alone in a home he has owned for 40 years in rural North Carolina, and when his family first came to me, they were begging him to move to an assisted living facility. He had fallen 3 times in 6 months. He walked with a shuffle. He was terrified of his own bathroom. His children were terrified for him. James refused to leave his home. He told me, "Dr. Mandel, if I leave that house, I'm done." I took that seriously. We started him on the most gentle possible resistance program. Seated leg presses, heel raises while holding a chair back, gentle resistance band work for his hips and core. We were slow, we were patient. We added balance-specific work as his strength improved. Single leg stands with support, tandem walking along a wall. James has not fallen in over 2 years. He still lives in that house. He tends his garden. He drove himself to his grandson's baseball game last month. At his most recent visit, I asked him how he felt, and he was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I feel like myself again." I didn't know how much I had lost until I got it back. James's story is not exceptional. It is repeatable across backgrounds, fitness levels, ages, and health histories. I have watched resistance training return people to themselves. People who had quietly accepted a diminished life, who had started referring to their own living rooms as places to be careful, who had stopped doing things they loved because they no longer trusted their own bodies. That quiet surrender is not inevitable. It is not a required part of aging. It is a consequence of muscle. Loss and muscle loss is reversible. For fall prevention specifically, I want to give you a very concrete starting protocol. Begin with 3 movements and only 3. Perform 2 days per week. Chair squats, lower yourself slowly into a chair, pause, stand back up, repeat 10 times. Standing heel raises, stand behind a sturdy chair, hold the back lightly for balance. Rise onto your toes 15 times slowly. And the seated hip march, sit tall in a firm chair and alternately lift each knee as high as comfortable 10 times each side. These 3 movements directly target the quadriceps, glutes, calves, and hip flexors, the 4 muscle groups most responsible for preventing falls. In 8 weeks, done consistently, research from the University of Pittsburgh's Department of Physical Therapy shows these movements can reduce fall risk by up to 37%. Pair these movements with daily balance practice. 1 minute of single leg standing on each side using a wall or sturdy surface for safety. Add calcium and vitamin D supplementation, which your physician can dose appropriately for you to maximize the bone density benefits of the mechanical stress you are applying. The combination of resistance, balance work, and bone nutrition creates a protective shield around your independence that nothing else in medicine can fully replicate. Before I close, I want to say something that I feel is important, not as a physician, but as someone who has sat with patients at the most vulnerable moments of their lives. I have seen what it looks like when someone loses their independence. I have watched proud, brilliant, vibrant human beings grieve the loss of their own capability. And I have also watched people get it back. I have watched an 80-year-old man return to his garden. I have watched a 74-year-old woman learn that her body still has strength inside it that no one told her about. I have watched a 71-year-old teacher get her mind back. These are not miracles. They are biology. They are the result of a body that, no matter how old it is still trying to adapt, still trying to grow, still responding to the signals you send it. You are not too old. There is no age at which this stops working. The research is clear on this. Studies have documented meaningful strength gains and functional improvements in adults well into their 90s. The body's capacity to respond to resistance training does not expire. What expires is the opportunity we waste by waiting. Every single week that passes without beginning is a week of muscle loss, a week of mitochondrial decline, a week of bone softening, a week of balance deteriorating quietly beneath the surface. But that process can be slowed, it can be stopped. In many cases, it can be reversed, and it starts with the simplest possible act, getting up from your chair and sitting back down again 10 times, twice a week. That is the beginning. Your independence is worth fighting for. Your quality of life is worth protecting. The years ahead of you are not a slow retreat from capability. They can be an expansion of it if you give your body the signal it is waiting for. This exercise is that signal, and it is within your reach right now, today, exactly as you are. If this video has been helpful to you, please subscribe to this channel so you don't miss what's coming next. We have videos on nutrition for seniors, pain management, sleep, and cognitive health that I believe will be just as valuable for you as what you watched today. And leave me a comment. I genuinely want to hear from you. Tell me your age, where you're watching from, and whether you've tried resistance training before. If you have, tell me what happened. If you haven't, tell me what's been holding you back. I read every comment. You are not alone in this, and you are not done yet. Not even close. And one more thing before you go. Right now, not tomorrow, not after dinner, right now, stand up from where you are sitting and sit back down slowly. Do it 5 times. That is it. That is resistance training. That is the beginning of everything we talked about today. Your body just responded. Your muscles just worked. Your mitochondria just activated. It starts that small and it grows from there. You have spent decades taking care of everyone else. Now I am asking you to spend 20 minutes twice a week taking care of yourself, for the garden you want to keep tending, for the stairs you want to keep climbing, for the grandchildren you want to keep up with, for the life you have earned and deserve to live fully. I am Dr. Mandel, and I will see you in the next video. Take care of yourself, and because you absolutely can.